It's player review day once again for Locked On Coyotes as we take a look at a group of players who were contributed to the Arizona Coyotes in a depth position. We got our first set, Moser, Dysin Mayo, and Alex Galchenyuk, all on today's episode of Locked On Coyotes.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Robyn Leonio. That's Carl Pavlik right beside me. On today's episode of Locked On Coyotes, I want to thank everyone for making Locked On Coyotes your first listen every day. We are 100% free and available on all platforms, which again does mean we'll never have a paywall for you to ever view or listen and access our content. But we have a good episode for you today. We got more player reviews, and we got all of our key players out of the way. So now it's time to take a look at depth players, Carl. And all these guys were pretty important role players. I'm not saying they weren't, quote key, but let's say they were depth players for the purpose of this show.
Yeah. Depth, support, however you kind of want to describe it. Honestly, some of the favorite players in hockey, I know one of the things I always like to tell people is my favorite type of player is a third line face-off specialist, just someone you could throw out there to win an important face-off. So very important players, very key piece of the game, but don't necessarily get the same kind of publicity. They don't necessarily get put out, at certain times, but they still have a role.
Absolutely. And on today's episode, we got an interesting trio of players. We got two Roadrunners call-ups and a returning player who initially was signed off for PTO.
Yeah. Three players who played for the World Championship with their respective countries, which just wrapped up. Some of them won medals, so we will definitely be talking about that on today's episode.
Absolutely. We will do that indeed. Let's get things started right away on our first player, Carl, Moser. He was initially started the season with the Tucson Roadrunners and then got called up pretty fast. And
I was just going to say, I think listed 18 games with the Roadrunners. So definitely first quarter of the season. And I don't think he ever went back, not even for conditioning, because I know he was hurt a little bit. But yeah, pretty early in the season.
I think he was sent back down during the holiday roster freeze.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah. Even though the holiday roster freeze didn't mean anything because everyone was shut down because of COVID, but
yeah, you send it down for the flexibility of it in case something happens, and nothing happened.
Exactly. But let's talk about Moser because he, again, he got called up pretty fast, and and the reason why he stayed is because he kind of proved that he belonged. Obviously, he wasn't a major player in the Coyotes defense, but I mean, the Coyotes defense was very, very. It was Swiss cheese. It had a lot of holes.
Which, makes sense. Moser's from Switzerland, so of course it's Swiss cheese. So the Coyotes drafted Moser in the second round, an older player, drafted as a 20-year-old, I believe, currently 21, about to turn 22 June 6th. So, an older player. With that came the ability to be, closer to making it to the NHL, which is something that we've talked about a lot this season.
And not only that is to be ready, starting the season in Tucson, right?
Yeah.
That way.
Yeah.
Rather than, other draftees who don't get that. But anyways, continue.
And I was just gonna say, I loved his confidence in his first call up. Like, just seeing him go to the net with the puck is not something you necessarily expect from a 20-year-old defenseman. Uh, like, you expect him to be a little bit more cautious. No, he showed that he definitely has confidence, but not necessarily the most consistent game. Looking at the World Championship numbers, played 8 games, had a goal and 3 assists. He did not medal. Just Switzerland didn't make it to the medal round, but good player, but plenty to grow off of.
Absolutely. And you look at his stats for the Coyotes season, 15 points in 43 games, and then you add on the Roadrunner stats, 12 points in 18 games. Um, Definitely still has a lot of room to grow. Of course, like you said, again, he's only 20, right? And
Yeah,
he was just freshly drafted in the previous draft. So like, it makes sense. And we didn't, and again, we go back to saying we didn't expect to make Tucson like as many Tucson Roadrunners call ups as the Coyotes did. So
yeah.
it's like it made sense if you put everything together, put all things together in that sense.
What would you grade him?
What would I grade him? Just because, like, for the purposes of how things, I'm going to put him around the average, around like I said, like that average. So about a C.
See, okay. I'm gonna go with C plus. Just I liked what he did in his call up. I think he definitely performed sooner than we would expect, but there was still a lot of holes in his game. He is still a 20-year-old. Definitely did great things, but not necessarily the best defenseman. I think we kind of saw that play out in the World Championship too, where he didn't continue his scoring ability. Like I said, he showed real confidence to start off, like with the Coyotes. I think that kind of started to like falter as the season went on, but definitely a lot of areas where he can grow.
Oh, absolutely, and I sure hope that he's able to get some more time in Tucson because I think that will help him a lot too. Because I think, I mean, that's the reason. Like that's you know part of the reason again why he was drafted, right? Because he can get sent to Tucson right away and have a closer monitoring during for his development.
Yeah, it's like I think one of the things we've come across, like this, series of player evaluations, is we really don't know what's going to be happening with the Coyotes defense like this next year. But like Moser seems like he may have earned a spot. It'll be interesting to see what he does in the off season, like how he builds, like does he build like a lot of muscle like Keller did. But we're really not sure what Bill Armstrong and Bear want to do for the Coyotes blue line. So we're not really sure where a player like Moser is going to end up, but he definitely did like a lot of good things. I think he has an NHL future like very soon. But I agree with you. I think he may like maybe need like another year, 3/4 of a year with the Roadrunners.
It's a seasoning thing, and I
Yeah,
mean, and that's not a knock. I mean, like every player needs a little bit of seasoning. There's some that are good enough, and it's a very, very minute few who are good enough to make the straight jump to the NHL and are freaking good and like superstars right off the bat.
yeah. And I mean, let's be honest, the players who are good enough to make the jump straight to the NHL, they don't get drafted as overagers. Like
No, we
that's
don't.
yeah. Uh again, it's not a knock against JJ Moser. I think we both are really impressed with the steps he's taken so far. But there's nothing wrong with like especially defensemen needing some like extra time to be ready. Like as we've said before, they develop a little bit slower. So it's fine. He's on like a good track. Just don't be surprised if he like if the team like centers his development next season.
Absolutely, absolutely. We still got more to get to on this episode of Lockdown Coyotes, though. We just talked about Giannis Moser. I graded a C. Carl gave him a C plus. We got two more players, Dysin Mayo and Alex Galchenyuk, coming up in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you guys about our next partner at rockauto.com. With summer being here in Arizona, it is going to get hot, which means that, you might as well, before it gets too hot, to go ahead and get some repairs done for your car and get some parts for really cheap. RockAuto.com is your place to do that. You can easily save a lot of money, up to 50% or even more, on parts versus a dealership or a chain store to get those parts. So, and then again, they have everything. You have motor oil, brake parts, tail lamps, anything you can potentially think of. RockAuto.com has it. It's a family business serving dirt service for over 20 years. And I want you guys to check it out yourself. Go to RockAuto.com and see all the parts available for your car or truck. And while you're there, be sure to tell them that Locked On sent you. They have a little box down there you can fill out in the "How'd you hear about us" box. That's where you tell them that Locked On sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com. Thanks again, everyone, for making Locked On Coyotes your first listen every day. I'd like to remind everyone once again that we are free, 100% free, and available everywhere you get your shows. But we got more on our player reviews to get to. We are talking Dysin Mayo now, Carl, another call-up from Tucson who spent a lot of time in Tucson. I think he started his first year in the AHL, so not like he was a part of the Springfield Falcons the year before coming to Tucson. So only played 5 games in Springfield, but then he played 25 games in Tucson in 2016, and a lot of games.
25 games with the Rapid City Rush. So guy who's spent some time in the ECHL. A player like we talked about who has been seasoned, who has been developed with the Coyotes organization, and he kind of came into his own this year.
He finally had his opportunity because this was his first shot into the NHL. And got 67 games in with the Arizona Coyotes. Like, talk about a freaking growth.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think that he is one of the players who definitely benefited from the Coyotes, like having a lot of blue line call-ups, but all the credit in the world to him. He is one of the few players, I think, from the Tucson Roadrunners who came in and made themselves a consistent presence on the Coyotes blue line.
And it goes back to our theme of the entire season where everybody has something to prove. And that included Tucson Roadrunners players. Dysin Mayo was one of those where, he was on a he's been signing 1 year deals in 2019 and 2020 and 2021. So his last three contracts were 1 year deals. And because of his performance and because of that fact he was able to make it onto the Coyotes play as many games as he did and be the role player that he was rewarded with a 3-year extension.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And well deserved. We talked about JJ Moser potentially needing some seasoning. I don't think we are going to see Dysin Mayo play for the Tucson Roadrunners next season. He seems to have established himself as a Coyotes defenseman. He is, went to the World Championship with Team Canada, had a less prominent role. I know in a lot of the recaps I was writing, didn't show up on the score sheet a lot, didn't get a lot of minutes, but that's fine. He was there. He got the experience. And he's not a superstar defenseman, but he is going to play an important role. I do look forward to seeing kind of what more defenseman he ends up being, because we do see that once you get to the NHL, you kind of develop your play style in a way where not necessarily going to do that the same in the AHL.
Absolutely. Right now, I can for the time being throughout this process, I think he is easily for the purpose of the show and how things are, a third pair defenseman, maybe even a number 70 man. Like,
Yeah.
and that's not a knock. That's not saying that's a bad thing or whatever. He still is on an NHL roster, so that's saying something still.
Yeah. And I mean, like, being a third pairing defenseman is being better than, like, the top pairing in an AHL team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you are in the show, you are doing it. You are probably going to have to face off against some of the top competition at some point in the game. Like, I think that's what we saw, like, in every single game this season. Like, Dysin Mayo had to be on the net against Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, Nathan McKinnon. Like, he had to face off against some of the top players. Granted, it wasn't key minutes every single night, but still, those matchups existed, and I think we're only going to continue to see them grow.
Absolutely, I sure hope so. And like, it makes it fun. It makes it just fun to see, someone who is, I was just looking at his draft year 2014, finally finally get that opportunity and do what he is doing now. And I think, was he one of the players, one of the call-ups that got that scored his first goal in his first game? That there was a number of Roadrunners D-man call-ups who did.
I am not sure. He definitely played his first game this season. This was his first call-up. I do not remember if he had his first goal in that one. He did finish with 4 goals and 8 assists, which is respectable. Like,
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
respectable.
I can only imagine the feeling of a player like Dysin Mayo, who stuck around with an organization for as long as he did. Again, like I said, 2014 he was drafted, and finally in this last year, in a rebuild year, he gets rewarded for sticking around, and gets 4 NHL level goals. Like,
yeah. How are you grading him?
how am I grading Dysin Mayo? I am going to give him for the role that he plays, a C plus.
C plus. C plus. Okay. I think this is just continuing the trend of this episode with me giving 1 grade higher. I was going to go with a B minus. I think he has more consistency than Moser. Like, the fact that we're doing 2 defensemen in a row, like, I just have to compare them. And I do think that Dysin Mayo, like, there's a reason he played more games. Like, he was consistently a good enough defenseman. Like, he also has plenty of space to grow, but he was good enough, and I hope to continue to see more from him.
Absolutely. And the only reason why, again, it's C plus is because of considering the role he played. Again, considering the role he played and the team he's on. It's like
Yeah.
And I had to put some comparisons, like, all right, who am I, who's he skating against, and when a competition's coming and doing stuff like that. I just tried to put a few extra points in there, and more of a nitpicky way.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, like, I feel like neither of us are going to give Dysin Mayo an A rating for his season. He did good. He wasn't great though.
No, again, and the A's were pretty rare for I think only 3 players we gave an A to. So
yeah, and not even, because I gave Strawman an A minus. You gave him a B plus. So,
that's right. That's
yeah.
right. So only 2 that were consensus A's.
Yeah. And you also gave Boyd an A minus. I gave him a B plus. So I think that's the first time I did lower than you. Either way, though,
Yeah.
like, it's tough to get an A. Like, the fact that we're in, like, the B, C plus area, like, that's a good spot to be in for Mayo.
That is a good spot to be in for Mayo. And again, and I'll reiterate what I said earlier. I'm just glad that a kid who stuck around the organization for as long as he did finally gets rewarded. So good for him, and excited to see more from him, because again, he has a 3-year extension with a little bit of a raise too. Now at 950K a year, so up 200,000 from his last deals.
Yeah.
So
Plus, I mean, term. Like, as you
yeah,
said, he was getting 1 year deals. He's got term. Can't knock term.
absolutely, absolutely. That is a sign that Bill Armstrong has liked what he has seen from him. We still got more to get to, though, on this episode of Locked On Coyotes. We're going to get to Alex Galchenyuk, the final player of this episode, in just a moment. But first, a word from our sponsors. So now let's get to Alex Galchenyuk, because we have we're gripping it and going in threes, and Alex Galchenyuk is the final player of this episode, Carl. And I think this is going to be a good one because he's bounced around a lot in the last few years since he was last in Arizona Coyote. He was signed to a professional tryout. Like, he wasn't even given a contract first. He was just like, hey, at least let me get a tryout with you guys and see what we get. And then throughout the preseason, he's like, you know what? We'll give you a contract. And, he proved that he proved that he still belongs in the NHL.
Yeah. It was kind of an interesting situation. Listeners, I'm not sure if you were aware. Apparently, Toronto offered him a contract and he took a PTO to go to Arizona. He still maintains his house in Arizona. Like, hockey players love to live in Arizona. He signed a PTO and a pretty cheap deal to be with the Coyotes. Did he earn another deal with the Arizona Coyotes? I'm not entirely sure, but he definitely was one of the more interesting players this year.
He was, and again, and I think it goes to the whole, having something to prove thing. 'Cause I'm not sure what the exact contract, what the terms were that Toronto offered. Maybe he just
Yeah.
wanted, maybe the reason why he just declined, whatever it was, is just that Toronto was too much of a microscope team. He wanted something more relaxed.
Or like a bigger depth team. Like the
Yeah,
Toronto Maple Leafs, like there's a reason they made it to the playoffs and the Coyotes didn't. And Galchenyuk did get to play with, Keller and Schmaltz at one point. Didn't stick there. It was kind of interesting to see Travis Boyd kind of take that role when it seems like it would have been perfect for a player like Galchenyuk. But I don't know. That's kind of like one of the things that we're kind of used to with Galchenyuk with the Coyotes. He never really seems to consistently play up to where he should.
yeah, and I think another thing too is, I think that's one of the reasons why he's bounced around so many times, right? Like, not just with the Coyotes, but like other teams. It's just like there is a expectation of where he's supposed to be in terms of the lining, where he is for a line, and he just doesn't meet that expectation.
Yeah,
I mean, what was he, like a third or fourth liner this year? Like,
yeah. There's an expectation for what line he should be on, and there's also like kind of still an expectation of what like position he should be because he's mostly a winger. He played some time in center. I think I don't remember who kind of brought it up though. Like, are we like ever going to see Alex Galchenyuk be a consistent center? Probably not. Like,
no.
uh, I don't know. And I do think that he had a great start to the World Championship. He was with Team USA, didn't finish with a medal, but did have a goal and 4 assists. Seemed to be really hot to start off. Uh, I mentioned that some players had medals. Turns out we only talked about one, Dysin Mayo winning silver for Canada. But Galchenyuk came close. I don't know. I'm always wanting more from him.
Yeah, and I think, and again, it comes with the expectation of how long he's been in the league too, right? He's
Yeah.
he's been in the NHL since 2012, and he was, then he was a member of the Montreal Canadiens, and he played well while he was a member of the Montreal Canadiens. Was he great? Not really, but he played well enough that, like, when he was, when he ended up going to Arizona, after 2018, the 2019 season, he where there was that expectation, right? There's like,
Yeah.
oh, we're getting a solid player, and it's worked. Oh,
He finished with 19 goals. He led the Arizona Coyotes that year with Brad Richardson. But also, if you're Alex Galchenyuk, you shouldn't be tying with Brad Richardson for goals. Like, I don't know. He's just a player who's yet to find like a spot where he really belongs. Which I mean, it kind of says something where if he could play in the third line and then play up to like the top or the second line every once in a while, but I mean, he never really seemed like a great third liner either.
I'm trying to think, just for purposes, when Arizona first got him, I'm trying to think what the trade was.
It was Domi. Galchenyuk for Domi, straight up. 1-1.
Okay, that's what it was. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then Galchenyuk and P.O. Joseph to Pittsburgh for Phil Kessel. Yep. Which it's an interesting player. I did kind of enjoy getting to see Galchenyuk with Kessel on the same line because it's always fun when you see two players like who are traded for each other playing on the same team.
Oh yeah, no, it is really fun when you see stuff like that happen. Not too often does it happen, just because you know NHL's got 32 teams now, so it's like, oh, things get moved around a lot. So when it does, it is pretty funny. I do thoroughly enjoy it. But
Yep.
Galchenyuk 21 points, 6 goals, 15 assists in 60 games, 32 penalty minutes, and a -11.
When you give it him for the grade?
Man, I'm giving him a C.
C. This is going the opposite route. I'm giving him a C minus. I really wanted more from Galchenyuk. I wanted him to like find a role with Keller or Schmaltz. He still showed that he has like a great shot, but the fact that I'm not even sure if he is going to have a contract with the Coyotes next year, like in the sense where I'm not sure they would offer him a contract, that says a lot. Like especially for this Coyotes team. If he sticks around, I think that'd be fine for like a league minimum deal. But I can see him maybe trying to move on, maybe try and find like someone who can like utilize him better because I just don't know.
Maybe go to another, you know, team that just needs depth. Team that is maybe rebuilding still. Also, I mean, it's not the Coyotes, or maybe just building. Maybe he signs a contract with Seattle. Who knows?
Yeah.
Because Lord knows Seattle needs a lot of help.
Yeah. I think he definitely has a role in the NHL. I do not think that is guaranteed to be with the Coyotes based off his performance this year.
Just didn't really fit the system.
Yeah. And that's fine. Like, not everyone does. I appreciate he took the chance. Like, I think he was given opportunity, and I liked a lot of what I saw. But if he's not a fit, he's not a fit.
Absolutely. But looks like we're all like roughly around, like roughly the same, like very close to the same. I think you you were for most of them, like the first two you had a half grade higher, and for this last one a half grade lower, but all within the same range. From as low as a C minus to as high as a B minus, I think is what you've given for a player. So within that range, and for debt players, not too shabby. Not
Yeah,
too shabby.
that's kind of where we would expect him to be.
Exactly. Anyways, though, we are out of time for this episode of Locked On Coyotes. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe if you have yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. Don't forget to interact with us on social media. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/LockedOnCoyotes. on Instagram at Locked On Coyotes, and on Twitter at LO_Coyotes. I am personally at Robyn_Leano. Carl Pavlik is Carl Pavlik FFH. Interact with us, ask the question you might have, we might answer right back, or on a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's episode. Hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope you guys are staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.